The funeral was on Sunday, March 16th, 1986. Dorothy Harper buried her husband Frank at Mount Hope Cemetery in Hardin County, Iowa. Frank was 63, had died of a heart attack Thursday morning while moving hay bales in the barn. Married 41 years. Dorothy was 61. The church was packed. Over 300 people. Frank had been well known in the county, respected farmer, 480 acres paid off completely since 1979, good equipment all owned outright, solid operation that had survived the early 80s crisis when so many others failed. Dorothy sat in the front pew with her two daughters, Karen, 38, married and living in Minneapolis, and Susan, 35, married and living in Des Moines. She listened to Pastor Mitchell talk about Frank's life, his integrity, his hard work, his dedication to family and land. She accepted condolences from what felt like the entire county. Then she went home to the empty farmhouse. Monday morning, March 17th, 1986, Dorothy was in her kitchen making coffee at 7:15 a.m. when the first pickup truck pulled up the driveway. She looked out the window, recognized it immediately. Bill Henderson's truck. Bill farmed 320 acres directly adjacent to her property, had known Frank for 32 years, had been at the funeral yesterday. Bill knocked on the kitchen door. Dorothy dried her hands and answered. "Dorothy." Bill took off his cap, held it in his hands. "I'm so sorry about Frank. Terrible loss, just terrible. I wanted to come by and see how you're doing, see if you needed anything." "I'm managing, Bill. Thank you for asking." "Good, good. Listen, I know this is a difficult time, but I wanted to talk to you about the farm, about the spring work. Planting season's coming up in a few weeks. You'll need someone to handle that. I wanted to offer my help." Dorothy had been married to a farmer for 41 years. She knew what was coming. "What kind of help, Bill?" "Well, I could take over the fieldwork for you. Plant your acres, handle the growing season, harvest. Just temporary, until you figure out what you're going to do long term. Sell, rent it out, whatever. But for this year, I could handle it. We could work out an arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Bill shifted his weight. "Standard crop share. I'd farm your 480 acres, provide the labor and management. You provide the land and equipment. We'd split the crop 40-60. You'd get 40%, I'd get 60. Dorothy had farmed alongside Frank for 4 decades. She knew exactly what Bill was proposing. He'd farm her land using her equipment, and she'd get 40% of the crop while he kept 60% for labor and management. On ground producing 150 bushels of corn per acre at $2.30 per bushel, the gross would be about $165,000. 40% would give Dorothy $66,000 gross, maybe $40,000 after her costs for inputs. Bill would get $99,000 for farming land he didn't own with equipment he didn't buy. "That's generous of you to offer, Bill. Let me think about it." Sure, no rush." "Well, actually, there is a bit of rush. Planting's coming up. But take a day or two. I just want to help, Dorothy. I know this is overwhelming for you." Bill left at 7:35 a.m. Dorothy poured her coffee. At 8:45 a.m. another truck pulled up. Jim Wilson, who farmed 640 acres 2 miles west. "Dorothy, I heard about Frank. Such a tragedy. He was a good man. I wanted to stop by and offer my condolences and my help. I know you're facing a lot of decisions about the farm. I appreciate that, Jim. I wanted to make you an offer, cash rent. I'd rent your 480 acres for the season, pay you $120 per acre up front. That's $5,600 guaranteed, no risk. You wouldn't have to worry about weather, prices, nothing, just cash in your pocket. I'd handle everything, inputs, labor, equipment, marketing." Dorothy knew the going rate for cash rent in Hardin County in 1986 was $145–160 per acre for good ground. Jim was offering $120, and while he'd handle inputs, Dorothy would still own the equipment that would need maintaining. She'd net maybe $50,000, while Jim would gross over $100,000 farming her land below market rate. I'll think about it, Jim. Thank you. At 10:15 a.m., Robert Mitchell arrived. Robert was a widower himself, had lost his wife Clara 3 years ago to cancer. He was 65, owned 240 acres, lived alone. Dorothy invited him in for coffee. They sat at the kitchen table. "Dorothy, I wanted to say how sorry I am about Frank. I know what you're going through. When I lost Clara, I thought I'd never get through it. But you do. Day by day, you get through it." "Thank you, Robert. That means a lot." I also wanted to say, well, I've been thinking about your situation, about the farm. You've got 480 acres that need managing. That's a lot for anyone, especially alone. I've been farming alone since Clara passed, and it's been lonely, hard too. So I've been thinking, maybe we could help each other. Dorothy waited. "What I mean is, maybe we could combine our operations, pool our resources. Your 480 and my 240, that's 720 acres. Good size. We could share equipment, share labor, be more efficient, and maybe..." Robert looked at her directly. "Maybe it could be more than just farming. We're both alone. We're both the right age. We get along well. Maybe in time we could combine households as well as farms." Dorothy understood perfectly. Robert was proposing marriage, or a path toward it. Combine the farms, combine their lives, solve both their problems. Convenient for Robert, who'd gained 480 acres and a wife. Less clear how it solved Dorothy's problems, since she'd be expected to hand over decision-making to the man. "Robert, I appreciate you thinking of me, but Frank's been gone 4 days. I'm not ready to think about anything like that." Of course. Too soon, I understand. Just wanted you to know the option is there. When you're ready, I'm here." By noon, 6 more men had stopped by Dorothy's house, each with a different proposal. Tom Peterson, who owned the implement dealership in Ackley, offered to buy her out entirely. $825 per acre for all 480 acres, $396,000 total. Dorothy knew land in Hardin County was selling for $150 per acre in March 1986. Tom was offering 72% of market value, taking advantage of her husband's death to acquire land cheap. Steve Carlson, who farmed 800 acres north of Iowa Falls, offered a crop share arrangement where he'd farm the ground. They'd split all costs and all profits 50-50. Sounded fair until Dorothy realized he'd control all decisions: which seed to buy, which fertilizer, which dealer to use, which elevator to sell to. He'd have incentive to inflate costs through dealers who gave him kickbacks, minimize reportable profits, and end up with the better deal, while Dorothy bore half the risk. Dan Morrison, who ran an agricultural consulting business, offered to manage the farm for her. He'd make all decisions, coordinate all activities, handle all marketing. Fee, $60,000 per year, plus 10% of gross revenue. For a farm grossing maybe $175,000, that meant Dorothy would pay him $77,500 annually to tell her what to do with her own land. Jeff Anderson, who'd recently expanded his own operation to 960 acres, offered to rent just her equipment. The tractors, the combine, the implements. He'd pay her $35,000 per year for equipment worth $185,000. That's an 18% return, well below market rental rates of 30 to 40%. Mike Sullivan offered to buy just the equipment at estate sale prices. He'd take the 1977 John Deere 4430, the 1979 International 1086, the 1981 Combine, all the implements, pay her $90,000 for everything. Auction value was probably $175,000. He wanted 51 cents on the dollar. And Bob Peterson, 68 years old, a widower who'd lost his wife in 1984, arrived at 11:50 a.m. with a bouquet of grocery store flowers and a speech he'd clearly rehearsed about how Dorothy shouldn't have to carry this burden alone, how she deserved to be taken care of, how farm decisions are too complex for women to handle, and how he'd be honored to step in and help manage things while they got to know each other better. By 12:45 p.m. on Monday, March 17, 1986, one day after burying her husband, Dorothy had received 9 separate proposals from 9 different men, 9 offers to help with the farm, 9 different schemes to separate her from her land, her equipment, her money, or her autonomy. Not a single one had asked her what she wanted to do. Not a single one had asked if she was planning to farm it herself. They'd all assumed she was helpless, overwhelmed, desperate for a man to rescue her. They were catastrophically wrong. Dorothy sat at her kitchen table that Monday afternoon and thought about the conversation she'd had with Frank 6 months earlier, back in September 1985, when his heart problems had first shown up at a doctor's appointment. They'd been sitting in this same kitchen at this same table. Frank had just come back from Dr. Sanders with news about an irregular heartbeat, high blood pressure, concerns about stress and overwork. "Dorothy," Frank had said, "we need to talk about what happens if something happens to me." "Don't talk like that." "We have to. I'm 63. I've got heart problems. We need to be realistic." He'd taken her hand. "If I die, you're going to get vultures. Frank, listen to me. You're going to get men, neighbors, dealers, consultants, maybe even some widowers, who see a widow with paid-off land as an opportunity. They'll show up fast, probably the day after the funeral. They'll offer to help. Every one of them will have an angle. They'll want to rent your ground cheap or buy it below market or manage it for fees or marry you and take control. Don't trust any of them." "What should I do?" "You should farm it yourself." Dorothy had looked at him skeptically. "Frank, I'm 61 years old. Can I really handle 480 acres alone?" "You've been handling it alongside me for 40 years. The only difference is I won't be in the tractor seat." "But Dorothy, you know every field on this place. You know the drainage, the soil types, the problem areas. You know equipment maintenance. You know dealers, markets, agronomists. You've been doing everything except driving the tractor. You can learn to do that too. People will say a woman can't farm alone. People said lots of things about us over the years. We proved them wrong every time. You can prove them wrong about this too." That conversation came back to Dorothy as she sat looking at 9 business cards and phone numbers scattered across her kitchen table. 9 men who'd shown up within hours of Frank's funeral. 9 offers that ranged from barely fair to outright predatory. She made a decision. She'd farm it herself, just like Frank said she could. Tuesday morning, March 18th, Dorothy drove to town. First stop, her lawyer, Bill Morrison. "Bill, I need to make something legally clear. I own this farm outright now. Frank and I owned it jointly as tenants by the entirety. Now that he's passed, it's mine completely. If anyone tries to file liens, claims, or any legal action suggesting they have rights or interests in this property, I want to be ready to respond." Bill Morrison had been Frank and Dorothy's lawyer for 23 years. Has someone made threats? Not threats exactly. But yesterday I had 9 men show up with offers to help with the farm. Some of the offers weren't quite fair. I want to make sure everyone understands this property is mine, and I'm not being pressured into any deals. Do you need me to send cease and desist letters? Not yet, but I want to be prepared if it comes to that. Also, I need you to review Frank's will. Make sure everything's clean. Make sure there are no complications with title transfer. Everything's straightforward. The farm transfers to you entirely. No probate issues. You have full legal control. Good. That's what I needed to know. Second stop, First National Bank. Dorothy had an appointment with loan officer Tom Stevens, Mrs. Harper. Tom stood when she entered his office. "My condolences on your loss. Frank was a good man, a valued customer." "Thank you, Tom. I'm here about operating credit for spring planting." "Of course. Given the change in circumstances, we'll need to set up a new loan structure. What did you have in mind? Same structure Frank used last year. Operating line of credit, $48,000 to cover seed, fertilizer, chemicals, paid back after harvest from crop sales. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Harper, the bank's lending policy requires additional documentation when there's been a change in farm management. I'll need to see a detailed business plan, projected yields, expense budgets, marketing strategies, contingency plans. Dorothy felt her anger building but kept her voice level. Tom, Frank walked in here last March, asked for $50,000 operating credit, and you gave it to him with a handshake and a one-page application. I'm asking for $48,000. We've banked here for 28 years. Never missed a payment. The farm is paid off. We have $185,000 in equipment, all owned free and clear. Why do I need a business plan when Frank didn't? Tom looked uncomfortable. Bank policy has changed. Given the agricultural economy, the economy is the same as it was last year when you gave Frank $50,000 without a business plan. The only thing that's changed is Frank's not here and I'm a woman. Is that what this is about? Mrs. Harper, that's not fair. Then give me the same terms you gave Frank. They negotiated for 20 minutes. Dorothy agreed to provide yield projections and an expense budget. Tom agreed to approve the $48,000 line. Dorothy got what she needed, but with requirements Frank never faced. Third stop, the local farmers' co-op. Dorothy needed to order seed corn for spring planting. The manager, Steve Hansen, saw her coming. Mrs. Harper, I heard about Frank. Terrible loss. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Steve. I'm here to order seed for spring planting. Need enough for 480 acres. Same variety Frank ordered last year. Pioneer 3737. Steve hesitated. Are you planning to farm this yourself? All 480 acres? I am. That's ambitious. Have you thought about maybe scaling back, planting half and renting the rest? Or planting a lower maintenance crop? Soybeans maybe instead of corn? Dorothy felt her jaw tighten. Steve, Frank ordered seed for 480 acres of corn every year for the past decade. I'm ordering seed for 480 acres of corn. Can you provide that? Or should I go to Ackley? No, we can provide it. I just want to make sure you've really thought this through. Farming alone at your age, that's a lot of physical work, a lot of stress, a lot of things that can go wrong. I'm aware. I'll take 480 acres worth of Pioneer 3737, seed treatment included, delivered by April 10th. She got the seed, but only after a 20-minute lecture about the challenges of solo farming that Steve never delivered to Frank. The rest of that week, Dorothy prepared. Wednesday and Thursday, she spent in the machine shed, servicing equipment. The 1977 John Deere 4430 needed an oil change, grease service, hydraulic fluid check. She did it all herself. Took longer than it would have taken with Frank helping, but she got it done. Frank had taught her equipment maintenance years ago, back in the 60s. You should know how everything works, he'd said. If I'm ever not here, you should be able to keep things running. So Dorothy knew how to change oil, how to grease fittings, how to check fluid levels, how to identify problems. Friday, she drove to the implement dealer in Hampton to pick up parts. The dealer, Ron Matthews, was surprised to see her. Dorothy, I heard about Frank. My condolences. What brings you in? Need some parts. Hydraulic hoses for the planter, a couple belts for the 4430. Oh. Is someone helping you with the farm? I could recommend some custom operators if you need. I'm farming it myself, Ron. Just need the parts. Ron processed the order, but couldn't resist commenting. You know, Dorothy, if you decide farming's too much, I know several people who'd be interested in your equipment. Good stuff, well maintained. You could get a fair price. Everyone wanted to help. No one thought she could do it alone. Her daughters called that weekend. Karen from Minneapolis, Saturday morning. Mom, I've been thinking about your situation. I talked to Stephen, and we think you should seriously consider selling the farm, moving to town. You could buy a nice little house, live comfortably, not have to worry about all this farm stuff. Karen, this is my farm. This is my life. I'm not selling. But Mom, farming alone at 61, that's dangerous. What if something happens? What if the tractor tips over or you get hurt? Or what if something happens anywhere, Karen? I could slip in the bathtub in town too. I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision. I'm farming. Susan called Sunday evening, said the same things. Both daughters meant well. Both thought their mother was incapable of farming alone. Over the next 4 weeks, March into April, Dorothy prepared for spring planting. She serviced all the equipment herself. She attended a seed corn seminar to learn about new varieties. She met with her agronomist to plan fertilizer applications. She calculated budgets, checked markets, lined up grain buyers, and all 9 men who'd shown up that Monday called again, checking if she'd reconsidered, if she needed help, if she was ready to be realistic about her limitations. Bill Henderson called twice. Dorothy, offer still stands. I can plant those acres for you. It's not too late. I'm fine, Bill. Tom Peterson called to say his offer to buy her out was still on the table, but land prices might be dropping, so you should act soon. Robert Mitchell called to invite her to dinner, just as friends, to talk about the future. She told them all the same thing. No, she was farming. Late April, Dorothy started planting. She climbed into the cab of the 4430, started the engine, engaged the planter, and began putting seed in the ground. She planted from dawn until dusk, 10 to 12 hours a day. Her back ached, her shoulders hurt. She was exhausted every night. But she planted, alone. All 480 acres. It took her 3 weeks. Frank had always done it in 2. But Frank had been farming since 1943, had 43 years of experience. Dorothy was learning, getting faster each day. By the 3rd week, she was covering as much ground as Frank used to. The neighbors watched, some with respect, some with skepticism, some waiting for her to fail, ready to swoop in with low-ball offers when she couldn't handle it. May and June, Dorothy managed the growing season, scouted fields for weeds and pests, applied herbicides using the sprayer, monitored weather and soil moisture. Everything Frank had done, she did. July and August, she watched the crop develop. It looked good. By late August, she was projecting 155 bushels per acre, better than average for Hardin County. September, she prepared for harvest, serviced the combine, greased bearings, checked belts, adjusted settings. October she harvested, started October 8th, finished October 28th, 20 days of combining. Frank had usually done it in 14, but Dorothy got it done, every bushel, 74 to 400 bushels of corn from 480 acres, 155 bushel per acre average. She sold at $2.35 per bushel, gross revenue $174,840. After expenses, seed, fertilizer, chemicals, fuel, equipment maintenance, insurance, property taxes, her net was $96,200. Compare that to what she would have netted under the various help offers from that Monday in March. Bill Henderson's crop share, $42,000 net Jim Wilson's cash rent, $48,000 net Robert Mitchell's combined operation, questionable, with loss of autonomy. Tom Peterson's buyout, $396,000 one time, then nothing. Any of the other schemes, worse. By farming herself, Dorothy netted $96,200 her first year, more than double what she would have gotten from the help. The neighbors noticed. The 9 men who'd shown up that Monday in March had to watch Dorothy Harper prove them all wrong. She farmed 1987, netted $103,000. She farmed 1988, netted $88,000 in a drought year. She farmed 1989, netted $112,000. By 1990, the offers stopped coming. The men who'd assumed she couldn't handle it had backed off. Dorothy had proven herself. She farmed through the 1990s. Some years good, some years tough, but she managed. Alone. In 2001, at age 76, Dorothy started thinking about retirement. She'd been farming solo for 15 years. Her daughters were both established in their careers. Neither wanted to farm. Dorothy made the decision to sell. She listed the 480 acres in spring 2002, got multiple offers, took the best one, $2,150 per acre, from a young farmer named Mike Chen, who'd been saving for years to buy his own ground. Total sale, $1,032,000. Dorothy retired to a modest house in Iowa Falls, lived comfortably on investment income from the land sale plus Social Security. Traveled, spent time with grandchildren, volunteered at church and the Historical Society. She died in January 2024, at age 98. Her funeral was smaller than Frank's. She'd outlived most of her generation, but her daughters were there, and her grandchildren, and some of the younger farmers who knew her story. Karen gave part of the eulogy. Mom buried Dad on Sunday, March 16, 1986. By Monday morning, 9 men had shown up at her door wanting to help with the farm. Every single one had an angle. Every single one assumed a 61-year-old widow couldn't possibly handle 480 acres alone. Every single one was wrong. Karen looked out at the small crowd. Mom proved them all wrong. Farmed solo for 16 years. Sold the farm for over $1 million. Never needed their help. Never needed anyone to rescue her. She rescued herself. Died. After the funeral, one of the grandchildren asked Karen, "Did she ever remarry?" "No. She dated a little in the late 90s, but never found anyone who respected her independence enough. She always said she'd rather be alone and autonomous than partnered and controlled." The grandson thought about that. So she was alone for 38 years after Grandpa died. She was solo for 38 years, but not alone. She had her farm, her friends, her family. She had her autonomy. That was enough. She buried her husband Sunday. By Monday, 9 men showed up wanting to help with the farm. She told them all no and farmed 480 acres solo for 16 years. Made over $1 million when she sold. Never needed their help. Sometimes the widow knows exactly what she's doing. But the full story of Dorothy Harper's 16 years of solo farming and how she went from being patronized on Monday morning to being respected as one of the county's most successful farmers requires more detail. Because those 16 years weren't easy. And there were moments when Dorothy doubted herself, moments when the 9 men seemed right about her being overwhelmed. The first real test came in June 1986, 3 months into her first season. Dorothy was in the field, checking her corn, when she noticed something wrong. Patches of yellowing plants. Not uniform yellowing, random patches scattered through the field. She walked through, examined the plants, couldn't identify the problem. This was the kind of situation where Frank would have known what to do immediately. Dorothy called her agronomist, Gary Peterson. "Gary, I've got yellowing corn in the northeast 40, random patches. Can you come take a look?" Gary came out that afternoon. Walked the field, pulled some plants, examined roots. Nitrogen deficiency, uneven application. Your fertilizer spreader probably has a calibration issue. Some areas got enough, some didn't. Can we fix it? Side dress nitrogen now. Should catch up. But Dorothy? Gary looked uncomfortable. This is the kind of thing Frank would have caught earlier. Solo farming. It's hard to stay on top of everything. You might want to consider hiring help, even just for scouting and monitoring. Dorothy bristled. How much nitrogen do I need to apply? They fixed the problem. Cost her an extra $100-200 in fertilizer and application. But the corn recovered. By August, you couldn't tell there'd been an issue. Still, it bothered Dorothy. She'd missed something Frank would have caught. made her doubt herself, made her wonder if the 9 men had been right. The second test came in August during a heat wave. Dorothy was combining oats. She'd planted 40 acres of oats as a nurse crop for alfalfa when the combine's engine overheated. Temperature gauge climbed into the red. She shut it down immediately. This was the kind of mechanical problem Frank had always handled. Dorothy knew basics, but this was potentially serious. She called the implement dealer. "Ron, my combine's overheating. Engine temp went critical. Shut it down before damage happened. Can you send someone out?" "I can, but service call is $125 plus parts and labor. Might be expensive. You sure you want to do that? Some farmers in your situation just trade in problem equipment, upgrade to something newer with warranty." Translation: You're a widow. You should sell me your old equipment cheap and buy new equipment expensive. Send the mechanic, Ron. The problem was a plugged radiator. Chaff and dust had blocked airflow. The mechanic cleaned it, charged Dorothy $185 total. A problem she could have diagnosed and fixed herself if she'd thought to check the radiator. Again, she felt inadequate. Frank would have known. The men who'd offered to help would have known. Was she really capable of this? But she kept farming, kept learning, kept proving herself. The third major test came in October 1987, her second harvest season. Dorothy was combining corn when a severe thunderstorm blew in fast. Winds hit 60 millipede. She was 3 miles from home. Had to leave the combine in the field, drive the truck back through the storm. The next morning, she drove out to check the combine. Found it tipped over on its side by the wind. Thousands of dollars in potential damage. Dorothy stood there looking at the overturned combine and felt like crying. This was beyond her capability to fix. She'd need a heavy wrecker, potential major repairs, insurance claims. The men who'd said she couldn't handle solo farming seemed right in that moment, but she didn't cry. She called her insurance agent, called a heavy equipment recovery service, got the combine uprighted and towed to the dealer for inspection. Damage assessment, $8,400 in repairs. Insurance covered $7,100 after deductible. Dorothy paid $2,300 out of pocket. Could have been worse. Ron Matthews, the dealer, said what he always said. "Dorothy, you're having a run of bad luck. Maybe this is a sign. Time to think about selling, letting someone else handle the headaches." Dorothy just looked at him. "Fix the combine, Ron." Each challenge made her stronger. Each problem she solved built confidence. By the end of 1987, she'd survived 2 full growing seasons solo. The doubts started to fade, but the 9 men hadn't given up entirely. They'd just changed tactics. In December 1987, Bill Henderson approached her at church. "Dorothy, I've been thinking about your situation. You've done well these 2 years, I'll give you credit, but winter's here. You're alone in that farmhouse. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider some kind of partnership? We could still work something out." "I'm fine, Bill. But think about the future. You're 63 now. How many more years can you farm alone? Eventually you'll have to quit. If we set up a partnership now, transition would be smoother. I could gradually take over as you wind down." Dorothy saw through it. Bill wanted to get his foot in the door now, gradually take control, end up with her land eventually. "Bill, when I'm ready to quit, I'll sell to whoever offers the best price. That might be you, might be someone else, but I'm not partnering with anyone." In February 1988, Tom Peterson called. His offer to buy her land back in 1986 had been $825 per acre. Now he was offering $950. "Dorothy, land values are starting to recover. This is a good time to sell. Get out while prices are up." "Tom, if land values are recovering, why would I sell now? Wouldn't I make more by waiting?" "Well, yes, but you never know when values might drop again. A guaranteed $950 per acre now versus an uncertain future." Dorothy knew what he was doing. Land values were indeed recovering. In another 5 years, they'd be back over $200 per acre. Tom wanted to buy now at $950. Ride the appreciation himself. Not interested, Tom. In 1989, Robert Mitchell tried a different approach. He invited Dorothy to a farm seminar in Des Moines. Just as friends, he said. Thought you might enjoy getting away for a day. Dorothy agreed. The seminar was legitimate. New hybrid varieties, pest management techniques. But over lunch, Robert brought up his old proposal. Dorothy, I know you turned me down 3 years ago, too soon after Frank. But it's been 3 years now. You've proven you can farm alone. Nobody doubts that anymore. But the question is, do you want to? Wouldn't it be easier with a partner? We could combine our operations, share equipment, share decisions, and yes, maybe share life too. Dorothy appreciated Robert's persistence. He'd been respectful, hadn't pressured her. But she still didn't want what he was offering. Robert, I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I like my independence. I like making my own decisions. I like not having to compromise or negotiate with anyone. I'm solo by choice now, not by circumstance. Robert finally understood, stopped calling. They remained friendly acquaintances, but he never proposed again. By 1990, Dorothy had been farming solo for 4 years. She'd faced equipment failures, weather disasters, market volatility, pest infestations, and every other challenge farming could throw at her. She'd handled them all. Her yields improved, her costs came down, her net income grew. In 1990, she grossed $187,000 and netted $121,000, the best year yet. The County Extension Office invited her to speak at a Women in Agriculture workshop. Dorothy declined initially, didn't see herself as a speaker, but the extension agent, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, persisted. Dorothy, you need to do this. There are other farm widows in this county who are getting pressured to quit, to sell, to rent out. They need to know it's possible to farm alone. You're proof. Dorothy agreed. Spoke to 35 women in November 1990. Told her story, Frank's death, the 9 men showing up, her decision to farm solo, the challenges she'd faced. The hardest part wasn't the physical work, Dorothy told them. It was the mental pressure. Everyone telling you can't do it. Everyone offering to help in ways that benefit them more than you. Everyone assuming you need rescuing. You have to believe in yourself when nobody else does. One woman in the audience, a widow named Patricia Holmes, whose husband had died in August, said, I've had men offering to rent my ground for half what it's worth, offering to buy me out cheap, telling me I can't handle it. But I don't want to quit. I want to farm. Then farm, Dorothy said. Learn what you don't know. Ask for help when you need it, but on your terms. Don't let anyone convince you you're incapable. Patricia ended up farming solo for 12 years. When she sold her land in 2002, she called Dorothy to thank her for that advice. Through the 1990s, Dorothy became something of a local legend. The widow who told 9 men no and farmed alone for over a decade. Young farmers would stop by her place asking for advice. She'd share what she knew, encourage them to avoid debt, maintain equipment, think long-term. In 1995, at age 70, Dorothy had a health scare. Chest pains while doing field work. Drove herself to the hospital. Turned out to be severe heartburn, not a heart attack. But it reminded her she was mortal. Her daughters flew in, both insisting it was time to retire. Mum, you're 70. You've proven your point. Nobody doubts you can farm. But maybe it's time to slow down. Sell the land, move to town, take it easy. Dorothy considered it. She was tired. The work was getting harder. But she wasn't ready to quit. Girls, I'm not retiring because of heartburn. When I'm actually unable to farm, I'll quit. But not yet. She farmed 6 more years, through 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001. In 2001, at 76, Dorothy finally admitted to herself it was time. Her knees hurt climbing into the tractor. Her back ached after a day of combining. She was slower, taking longer to do tasks that used to be quick. She made the decision to sell, listed the 480 acres in March 2002. Within 3 weeks, she had 7 offers. The best came from a young farmer named Mike Chen, 32 years old, who'd been saving and working custom jobs for 8 years to build a down payment. Mike offered $2,250 per acre, of $132,000 total. He had $400,000 saved for down payment, 39% down, which impressed Dorothy. He needed to finance $632,000, but had strong credit and manageable debt-to-income ratio. Dorothy accepted Mike's offer, closed in May 2002. After paying capital gains tax and legal fees, she netted about $910,000. She bought a small house in Iowa Falls for $115,000, invested the rest conservatively, mostly municipal bonds and CDs, generated about $45,000 per year in income plus her Social Security of $100 per month. Lived comfortably on $58 and $200 per year, saved the rest. Retirement was quieter than farming, but not idle. Dorothy volunteered at the County Historical Society, organizing agricultural exhibits, traveled, took a bus tour through New England, visited her daughters, went to the Grand Canyon. She dated occasionally, met a retired teacher named George Williams in 2003. They went to dinner a few times, enjoyed each other's company. But when George started hinting at moving in together, combining finances, Dorothy backed off. "I spent 61 years sharing my life with someone," she told Karen. 41 with your father, 16 alone, 5 retired. I'm used to being independent now. George is nice, but I don't want to merge my life with anyone." She stayed solo by choice. In 2010, at 85, Dorothy moved to an assisted living facility, not because she couldn't live independently, but because the house was getting to be too much. The assisted living community offered meals, activities, medical support if needed, but still private apartments and autonomy. She lived there for 14 years, read books, played cards with other residents, followed farming news. Every spring she'd feel restless when planting season came. Part of her missed it, but she never regretted selling. She'd farmed as long as she could, left on her own terms, made a fortune doing it. The 9 men who'd shown up that Monday in March 1986? Bill Henderson lost his own farm in 1991 due to debt accumulated in a bad expansion decision. The man who'd wanted to farm Dorothy's 480 acres for 60% of the crop couldn't manage his own 320 acres profitably. Jim Wilson farmed until 2004, sold out and retired. Never achieved the scale he'd dreamed of. Tom Peterson's implement dealership closed in 1999, couldn't compete with larger dealers. Robert Mitchell farmed his 240 acres until 2008, sold for $2,400 per acre, retired comfortably. He and Dorothy remained friendly until he died in 2017. The others scattered, retired, some died. None ever publicly acknowledged that Dorothy had been right and they'd been wrong. But they knew. The whole county knew. Dorothy Harper, who 9 men had dismissed as incapable in March 1986, had proven herself one of the most successful farmers in Hardin County. When Dorothy died in January 2024 at age 98, her obituary ran in the Des Moines Register, not just the local paper. It mentioned her 16 years of solo farming, her sale for over $1 million, her advocacy for farm widows. At her funeral, Mike Chen, the young farmer who'd bought her land in 2002, came to pay respects. "Dorothy sold me her farm 22 years ago," Mike told Karen. "Best decision I ever made. That ground is still producing, still profitable, and every spring when I plant those acres, I think about her proving everyone wrong. About her showing that assumptions about age and gender are just that, assumptions. She was an inspiration. Karen smiled. She'd appreciate you saying that. Dekuln, the woman who was supposed to fail, farmed for 16 years, made over $1 million, lived to 98, and died with her autonomy intact. The 9 men who'd shown up to help that Monday in March 1986 had all been proven wrong. Sometimes the people who offer help are really offering control, and the people who refuse help are the ones who end up thriving. She buried her husband Sunday. By Monday, 9 men showed up wanting to help. She told them all no and proved she didn't need them. That's the whole story.